Just 20 beavers, not 200, not 1,000, 20. They were flown in on a cargo plane, released near a lake at the edge of the world, and nobody really kept tabs on them after that. 80 years passed. Today, that same territory has more than 200,000 dams. Forests that had stood for 150 years have been wiped out. Land twice the size of Buenos Aires has been flooded. And scientists are calling it the largest landscape transformation in the last 10,000 years. No wildfire, no flood, no war, just 20 beavers. Tierra del Fuego is an archipelago at the very southern tip of South America. Beyond it, there's only the Drake Passage and Antarctica. Constant wind, cold rain, fog for most of the year. There is a summer, but it is short and never really warm. Despite the harsh climate, the islands are not bare. They are covered in forests of southern beech, which the locals call lenga. It is a slow, stubborn tree that has been growing in this climate for thousands of years. Nature did its work and made these places truly magnificent. Everything existed in harmony, in a state of balance. The population there was never large. In '46, the Argentine side of the island looked like a forgotten corner of the country. A few small towns, some pasture land, military outposts. Land there was, people there were not. Given the local climate and terrain, the land held no particular financial value. The Argentine military looked at Canada and saw a working model that made money. The fur trade, hunters, settlers, cash. Beavers in Canada had fed entire provinces. The climate in Tierra del Fuego was similar. There were forests, there were rivers. Why not do the same thing? And so they did. In '46, the Argentine Navy organized the delivery, 20 beavers by plane, brought in from the Canadian province of Manitoba. Released near Lake Fagnano, deep in the interior of the island. No fanfare, no ceremony. They just opened the cages and forgot about it. For the first 30 years, hunting beavers was banned. Standard logic. Let the population grow, then start harvesting. Nobody was in a hurry. The beavers multiplied, spread through the rivers, built dams. It seemed like everything was going according to plan. But soon, something happened that nobody could have seen coming. Fashion changed. Demand for fur collapsed, pelt prices crashed. Hunters had no interest in trekking into the remote parts of the island for next to nothing. And on top of that, something important came to light about the climate that nobody had thought through ahead of time. In Canada, beavers grow a thick, dense coat in winter as protection against the cold. In Tierra del Fuego, winters are milder than in northern Canada. The beaver simply has no reason to bother. The pelt comes out thinner with almost no commercial value. The whole plan had been built around thick, valuable fur, but nature had other ideas. By the '90s, it was completely clear that there would be no fur trade. But the beavers did not know that. By then, they had spread across the entire island and were already pushing further. You might wonder, what could possibly go wrong? After all, beavers live on multiple continents and coexist perfectly well with the natural world around them. But there are a lot of factors worth getting into here. A beaver, if you look at it honestly, is a remarkable engineer, not metaphorically, but literally. It fells trees, dams rivers, creates ponds. In North America, this works as part of the ecosystem. Beaver ponds hold water, create wetlands where dozens of other species thrive. There, a beaver builds, and life blooms around it. In Tierra del Fuego, things went differently. Not because the beaver was doing anything wrong, it was doing exactly what it had always done. The problem was the trees. The southern beech had grown in these forests for thousands of years, but had never encountered a creature that would cut it down and flood it out. In North America, trees had millions of years to develop a defense. When a beaver cuts down an aspen or a willow, it grows back from the roots and survives. The southern beech cannot do that. Cut it down, flood it out, and the tree simply dies. The lenga has shallow roots. When a beaver dams a river and the water starts rising, the trees stand in flooded soil for weeks, then months. The roots rot, the tree falls, and so it goes across the whole floodplain, one after another. Eyewitnesses who walked through these areas describe the same scene every time. White, bare trunks sticking up out of the water, or out of waterlogged ground. No leaves, no bark, no life. Locals started calling these places ghost forests. You walk through the woods and all around you stand dead trees like fence posts. One Chilean hunter talked about coming back to a spot where just a few years earlier he had gathered firewood himself. Dense forest, shade, birdsong. Now there was a pond. White trunks jutted out from the middle of it. He said he did not recognize where he was at first. So completely had everything changed. A beaver does not fell a tree because it wants the wood itself. It wants the branches and the bark. That is what it eats. The trunks go into the dam. One beaver family can take down several hundred trees in a single year. Then they move to the next stretch of river and do the same thing there. The first time I looked at satellite images of these areas on Google Maps, I could not believe what I was seeing. You can see chains of ponds stretching along entire river systems, one after another. Where there used to be a river, there is now standing water. Where there used to be forest, there are thousands of fallen dead trees. Take a look yourself, it is quite a sight. Scientists from several universities decided to count the dams from satellite imagery. Not roughly, but methodically, going through images square by square. The results were published in 20. Across the archipelago, an area of 73,000 square kilometers, they counted 206,000 beaver dams. 206,000. For comparison, that works out to roughly 3 dams for every square kilometer of territory suitable for beavers. Every dam is a flooded patch of forest. Every flooded patch is trees that will never grow back. In North America, beaver populations are kept in check by wolves, bears, lynx, and mountain lions. In Tierra del Fuego, the beaver has not a single natural predator. None at all. The animals that could stop it simply do not exist here. The beaver found itself on an island alone with the forest and nothing holding it back. A pair of beavers produces 2 to 4 kits per year. Survival rates are high, there are no competitors, food is everywhere. The population grew the way debt grows at a bank when nobody is minding it. At first, barely noticeable, then faster and faster, then suddenly you have no idea what to do about it. By the end of the 90s, beavers had taken over virtually all of Tierra del Fuego. But they did not stop there. They can swim, and distance is no obstacle for them. In the 90s, the first beavers crossed the Beagle Channel and showed up on the Chilean side. Then they made it to the Brunswick Peninsula on the mainland. That was the moment the problem stopped being Argentina's alone and became everyone's. Chile had not brought in any beavers, had not asked for any, but now they were there too. A border between countries means nothing to a beaver, it just swims toward wherever there are trees. Argentine naturalist Claudio Bertonati, one of those who has long been sounding the alarm about this, compared what happened to the destruction of Polish forests during World War II. A harsh comparison. But when you look at the scale of it, you understand what he meant. By official estimates, by the mid-2000s, beavers had destroyed forests and wetlands covering an area twice the size of Buenos Aires. That is not just a big number. Buenos Aires is a city of 3 million people, with neighborhoods, boulevards, and parks. Now multiply that by 2, and picture it all replaced by standing water and dead trunks. It was not just the forest that suffered. Beaver dams changed the character of rivers. Where there used to be fast, cold water, there is now a warm, stagnant pond. Trout and other fish that spawned in these rivers disappear or die off. Birds that fed along the riverbanks lose their usual habitat. And on top of that, the beavers reached the peat bogs. Tierra del Fuego is rich in peatlands that had been storing carbon for thousands of years. When a beaver floods a peat bog, it begins to decompose and release that carbon back into the atmosphere. Nobody talked about this for a long time, but scientists eventually ran the numbers, and the figures were not comfortable. Alongside the environmental damage came economic damage. Flooded roads, farmers' fences knocked out, telephone poles brought down, foundations of power lines washed out. By some estimates, just in Argentina, beaver damage runs about $66 million a year. Every year, year after year, And here's what is interesting. While all of this was happening, the beaver itself was not in any particular rush. It was just living, building, eating, breeding, doing what it does best. The problem was not the beaver, it was that nobody thought through where exactly they were taking it. Population estimates at that point varied. Official figures put it somewhere between 70 and 110,000 animals. 20 animals over 80 years had turned into 100,000, with no predators, no hunting, no control of any kind. One scientist from the University of Magallanes put it this way: what the beavers have done to the forests of Tierra del Fuego is the largest landscape transformation in the sub-Antarctic region in the last 10,000 years. Since the end of the last ice age, these forests had not changed so drastically or so fast. And all of it in 80 years, in a single human lifetime. In 2016, the Argentine government made an official announcement. The country declared war on the beavers, not figuratively, but literally, with a plan, a budget, and an international treaty. The goal? Eliminate 100,000 beavers from Tierra del Fuego. Chile joined in. The two countries signed a joint action agreement. That in itself was unusual. Argentina and Chile are not historically the closest of allies. But the beaver turned out to be exactly the kind of problem that brings people to the table. The United Nations backed the eradication program, and so did conservation groups. Organizations that normally defend animals agreed here that these ones needed to be killed. Because the alternative is only one: keep watching the forest disappear. The officially approved method is a blow to the head. Not poison, not traps, specifically that. Poison bait kills indiscriminately. Traps maim animals and leave them to die for hours. A blow is instant. That is exactly why it was chosen. Even before the official declaration of war, the Argentine government launched a pilot project. 10 hunters, 7 sections of the island, 3 years of work. Over that time, they conducted nearly 10,000 hunting expeditions and eliminated about 1,000 beavers. 1,000 in 3 years. And there are 100,000 on the island. Scientists then calculated how much time and money it would take to fully eliminate the population on just the Argentine side. $31 million, 17 years. $31 million in 17 years to fix the consequences of a decision that, back in '46, apparently did not get so much as one serious meeting. They brought them, released them, forgot about them. 2 generations will be paying for it. But even if the beavers are eliminated, the forest will not come back on its own. That turned out to be the second problem, one that almost nobody talked about at first. The southern beech grows a few millimeters a year. Where the ghost forests now stand with their white, dead trunks, living forest will return at best in a few centuries. There is another complication. When a beaver dam is destroyed, the water drains and the peat bog that lay beneath it is exposed. Peat, as long as it stays wet, stores carbon that is accumulated over thousands of years. When it dries out and begins to decompose, that carbon goes into the atmosphere. You kill the beaver, destroy the dam, and you create a new problem. Scientists are still debating how to properly restore these areas. First, remove the beavers, then drain the ponds, then wait centuries for the forest to grow back. Or leave some ponds undisturbed so as not to disturb the peat bogs. There is no single answer. Every option carries its own consequences. The beavers also brought some company with them. Muskrats and American mink, also introduced at some point, have appeared on the islands. Beaver ponds created ideal habitat for them. Warm, standing water with plenty of cover. One invasive species set the table for others. That same Chilean hunter who first walked into a ghost forest and did not recognize the place where he used to work, eventually left his old job behind. In 2015, he started a tourism company. It is called Navarino Beaver. He takes people through the dead forests and tells them what happened here. Paid tours of an ecological disaster. At first, that sounds cynical, but otherwise people will never see or understand the scale of it. You can talk about hectares and dam counts all you want, but when a person is standing among white dead trunks and seeing it with their own eyes, something shifts. Local residents in Tierra del Fuego have different feelings about the situation. Some want the beavers completely wiped out. They are tired of fixing fences and digging out flooded roads. Others feel that the beaver has become part of this place now, and treating it like an enemy is wrong. A few people even came out against the eradication program. One researcher who studied the history of this situation came up with a term that stuck with me. He called it the Beaver Age, by analogy with the Ice Age or the Carboniferous. A period in the history of Tierra del Fuego when one introduced species changed the landscape more than anything in the last 10,000 years. The Beaver Age. It began in 46, and it is still going on. The eradication program moves slowly. Funding is short. The territory is vast and hard to reach. Hunters are few. The beavers, meanwhile, keep breeding. By the latest estimates, the population across the archipelago still numbers in the tens of thousands. In other parts of the world, the beaver is considered one of the most valuable animals for an ecosystem. Not loosely valuable, but measurably. Beaver ponds hold water during dry seasons, filter sediment from rivers, create wetlands where fish, birds, and amphibians thrive. There, the beaver restores what humans have managed to wreck. It is deliberately reintroduced to rivers where it had disappeared. The same beaver, the same dam, the same teeth, and the same instincts. In Tierra del Fuego, that is called the largest ecological disaster in the region in 10,000 years. One and the same animal, two completely different outcomes. I thought about this for a long time while putting this material together. The beaver did nothing wrong. It did exactly what it was built to do. All of the responsibility lies with the people who made the decision in 46, without knowing what was waiting for them down the road. The eradication program continues. Somewhere in Tierra del Fuego right now, hunters are walking into another ghost forest and doing their work. And nearby, a few kilometers away, another beaver is felling another tree that had been standing for 100 years. And so it goes, every single day.